Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here and to talk to you today about the Avengers strategy, how we win together as a global team of superheroes. Let me introduce myself. I'm Christian Hardenberg, the Chief Technology Officer of Delivery Hero. Since I started at Delivery Hero, we grew a lot. I'm here for 6 years, and we now have 1.3 million restaurants and shops on our platform. A lot of this growth came from these companies that joined our group. I think it's quite special about Delivery Hero that we are a group of what we call superheroes. Each of these brands is a local hero, and together we think we are unbeatable. Have a look at all the countries we operate in, 70 by now, all over the world. And that obviously led to some interesting challenges. For example, I have a distributed tech team in 20 different cities, like Berlin, Barcelona, Buenos Aires, Montevideo, Cairo, Dubai, Singapore, Seoul, and so on. It also led to a very distributed tech stack. We have all kinds of languages, infrastructures, databases, and architectures. But all these challenges also led to an amazing growth, 20x in size since I started 6 years ago. On this slide, you can see a little bit the different stages. We were founded in Berlin about 10 years ago, and then step by step more companies were joining the group, like Talabat, Foodpanda, and also the amazing Huber brothers in Korea. I could talk about a lot of interesting things today. For example, how we do 50,000 releases per month without compromising reliability. How we run 1.4 million riders in real time. How we built a robot in Korea to deliver food, or how we use machine learning in almost all parts of the platforms. Or maybe how we do coordinate 3,000 engineers in 20 countries. But I think what's really special about Delivery Hero is how we win together as a group or a team of local superheroes. And that's what I want to focus about today. Let me break down this topic into 3 buckets. First of all, speed versus efficiency. Then I would like to talk about culture. And finally, about technology. Let's start with speed versus efficiency. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're an engineer, you hopefully or probably will know the word refactoring. Refactoring is what we engineers love to do. It is about, reducing duplicated code. We learned that duplicated code is really bad. And if you read this book like me and come to Delivery Hero, you might think, wow, we have so much duplication. We have 30 different platforms and they essentially do the same. That isn't efficient. Let's remove it. When I started, my mission was very clear. Let's move everything to one global platform. Well, before doing so, I decided, let's go on a trip and meet all these teams and understand what they are doing. So I went around the world on a very interesting trip. And I met teams in Istanbul, Bogota, Kuwait City, in Seoul, Egypt, Riyadh, Budapest, Athens. The smallest team I met was actually in Finland, 3 developers and a dog. The most interesting team I think I met was in Saudi Arabia with a very different culture. And it was amazing to see all these different, extremely smart, motivated people working around the world, building amazing apps. They were close to their customers, they were close to their operations, and close to their business. And Delivery Hero was a little bit far away from them. It felt like, yeah, they have very good intentions, but they're a bit slow, a little bit out of touch with reality, maybe a little bit how you would talk about a nice old grandmother. So it dawned on me that what I learned about code might not be the same for organizations. While refactoring in code makes it more maintainable, performant, bug-free, refactoring an organization, often called centralization, can have the opposite effect. I talked to the CEO of Zalando, Robert Gens, about it. And he said it very simple. He said, decentralization is always inefficient, but centralization is always slow. You have to pick. You can have speed or you can have efficiency. You can't have both. It's almost like a law. Let's call it Robert's Law. So obviously, we are in a very tight race for market leadership in a very valuable market. And I think the core why we have so many companies is because we decided to prioritize, to say speed and localization is more important than efficiency for us. You might think now, but what about these companies? Why is there only one Facebook, one Airbnb, one Google, and one Netflix? They don't need local companies to win in their markets. But if you look a little bit closer, you will see that in all these cases, there are pretty strong network effects in place. You know, a Facebook that only works in one country doesn't really make a lot of sense. The same is for Airbnb in just one country, or a local Google, or no local Netflix. All these business models make most sense on a global scale. So there's huge advantage of being global. Unfortunately, in our business, food delivery, things are a little bit different. We don't compete globally. We don't often even compete on a country level. We compete for every single city, every single street. Yeah, if you look at these players, we call them the street fighters. And it's an intense competition, I can tell you. To compete with these street fighters, we need our own strategy instead of what I would call the Lord of the Rings strategy, one single platform that rules them all. We decided for the Avenger strategy. We are a team of local superheroes. Everyone has their unique strengths, their unique brand, but together we are unbeatable. Now, let's have a little bit a look at culture. So once we decided to go for the Avenger strategy, the obvious question is, how do we work together as a team most efficiently? This has a technology and a cultural component. Let's start with culture. First of all, we invest a lot into face-to-face communication. Our main way of doing this is so-called summits. That's an MD summit, finance summit, a marketing summit, a product and tech summit, and more. You can think of this as internal conferences. The obvious goal of this summit is to learn from each other. But maybe even more relevant than the learning and sharing part of summits is the element of connecting people. Our model of collaboration is very dependent on trust, which again is only created in personal interactions, visiting each other, having dinner together, understanding the other perspective. Given that we are a food delivery company, eating is a great way to do so. We say we don't like to eat alone. So here's some pictures of some of the great dinners I had all over the world. And it's one of the nice parts of this business that you get to know a lot of good food places. Another thing we do to work together is something what we call the Global Tech Council. Here, we bring together the CTOs and the most senior leaders of Delivery Hero. We meet every second week, and we also meet in person twice a year. Here together, we decide on strategy, global policies, and things we want to solve together as a group. Last time we met here, for example, in Berlin or in China, checking out robots. We also went delivering together as a group to test out our own products. And as we all struggle with the same questions, how to organize a team at scale, how to go faster at our size, how to attract and retain talent, how to measure what matters, how to make machine learning a first-class citizen, how to orchestrate microservices or democratize data. And these are difficult topics. No one has the full answer. And I think the best way to move forward is to bring together a diverse group of very senior, talented people to the table and discuss. And for me, these discussions are probably the most fulfilling part of my job. Another advantage of how we run our business is that we can test things in parallel. While other companies might do one thing at a time because they all have to go through the same platform, we can say, let's do drone delivery with Foodpanda, robot delivery with Talabat. Let's do coffee delivery in PedidosYa, do our own warehouses in Europe, do a new search algorithm in Kuwait, and test a complete new branding in Singapore. So we often can run innovations in parallel and then see in the different markets what works and what doesn't. And if we see something is working, then it's much easier to scale it globally because we have this proof of concept. Next to solving hard topics together, we also build things together. And that's what we call global services. So we have these consumer platforms like Woowa, Foodpanda, Talabat, PedidosYa, Hungerstation, and others. They are there to build independently an amazing customer experience for their markets. But below these platforms, we built a number of global services around quick commerce, fintech, infrastructure, vendor systems, data, logistics. These backend services have APIs, and you could see them a little bit like other SaaS services, for example, Google Maps. And we only have to build them once and can integrate via API to the platforms. We invest quite a bit in these global services and have roughly 2,000 people end of this year working in this area. But by doing so, we need to really be careful to find the right balance between autonomy for the local teams and not to have conflicts and overlapping missions. To do so, we create operating principles. And a principle for whole Delivery Hero, a model how we work together as an organization, and standards around global services. The core, if you read these principles, the first sentence, it says, at the core, we believe in local know-how and entrepreneurship. So we want to create this environment where entrepreneurs can thrive after becoming a part of the Delivery Hero group. For me, that's the only way at our scale that it is not enough anymore to talk to people. We are almost 50,000 people now. So, but by writing down really good documents, you can also, if new teams join the group, you can have them read what is our belief, but these beliefs never stop, or these documents are never finished. But as we learn and evolve, we update them quite regularly with new learnings and make sure everyone in the company can participate in these update processes. So I think, at the core, we want to be this environment that is not too centralized. And maybe a good example is Europe. In Europe, there are many different countries with their own culture came together and say, some things we want to solve together. We want these cultures to happily coexist. And Brussels' role is not to create one common European culture, but rather selectively solve problems that can be best solved on a supranational level. I think in that sense, Delivery Hero is probably a very European company. And my personal ambition is to build a great tech company here in Europe that can compete eye level with the giants in the US or China, but find our own very distinct way of doing that, not copying the US or China, but finding our own middle way. And I think a little bit similar to Europe, finding a way that is more inclusive and more diverse than others. So much about culture. Let's also talk a bit about technology, as this is a technology conference, obviously. The main question here is, as a group with more than 4,000 people in product and tech across 20 countries, how do we manage this complexity? We are really distributed all over the world, in South America, Middle East, Europe, and a lot in Southeast Asia. And this isn't easy. We have just finding a time where everyone is awake is hard. Sometimes people here have to get up early and people in Seoul have to stay up late so we can all be in the same meeting. Language is hard. Not everyone speaks English. And cultures are different, working cultures and so on. But it's also, for me, very rewarding to come together and learn from each other. And so how do we manage the complexity? I think, first of all, we need to simplify our tooling. We have decided on a few things that are really useful and over time try to move to those tools. We also like to work together to find, what are the technologies that work best for Delivery Hero. And we publish them in a so-called tech radar, which is areas that should be adopted, that should be assessed or tried. Some things should be hold, meaning let's not invest further in this and move away from these technologies. This radar we created together with all the CTOs, and it represents the common view of the technologies we like and maybe the ones we don't like so much anymore. In general, we don't enforce this, but what happens once you publish this, people start to save a line and also use that as a tool to make important decisions for new projects. In general, if you're interested, Delivery Heroes, most projects now are running on Golang. It has been a technology that works really well for us, but also quite a bit of Python, Java, a bit less Node.js. In the front end, we use React, Kotlin, and the other technologies you see up here, the smaller ones, are more or less moving away from them slowly. So a lot happens with transparency and standards, but sometimes simplification has to go further than that. When I started, we had 30 different platforms, and that is just too many. So we need to make a trade-off. For a very small country like Finland, it just doesn't make sense to build. You don't get the right scale. So in these cases, what we do is a migration. Migration means moving one platform into another. And we did quite a bit of that. So from the 30 platforms I started with 6 years ago, we decided to move to 7 big ones. And those consolidated the others. Each of those migration is a hairy project. And the bigger the country, the harder. in the end, it's an extremely complex waterfall project where you need to coordinate thousands of people potentially, because it's not just about technology, but also about all the operations that change. And that needs to be really well managed. It takes 6 to 12 months. And I've done a lot of them. I think we're getting better, but I can also say it's not the most favorite part of my job. Maybe the favorite part is then once we are done to celebrate, and we make sure we celebrate after success with our colleagues. Another thing we do to work together is encode learnings. And one document I'm really proud about and I recommend reading is the Deliver Your Reliability Manifesto. It's a very concise 7-page or 10-page document where we put in all our learnings how to build highly reliable systems. Because as you know, we don't have a lot of room for failure. In Amazon, maybe if there's a mistake in the warehouse, they can deliver a day later. In our case, if there's a 10-minute delay, food gets cold, customers get unhappy, riders get stuck, vendors don't get orders. So we need to be really, really good at reliability. And I think we are, and our learnings are in this document. I would say the other thing that I really care about is regular architecture and technical debt reviews. We do this also globally and look into, what are good rules, how to build strong systems, and where do we deviate from these rules, and we track the technical debt around it. And then, again, learn from each other how to resolve those things in the best way. It's a bit feels sometimes like reassembling a plane while you fly, and you need to be careful not to do too much of that, otherwise the plane might crash. But what worked well for me is having a very clear tracker of everything that is debt, and then have a regular amount you pay back every year. And some things might stay in this tracker for 4 years or longer, but eventually they get addressed. And one thing that works really well, what I call gamification. So if you have a lot of distributed teams, it's very hard to tell them what to do. But some things are very important to me, obviously, like security and reliability. So the way I do it is I create together with the CTOs rules, almost like a game design where we define points and achievements for certain things in security and reliability. And then we have a game master or a referee who is tracking the different teams and look, do they follow these? Did they get the achievement? And then assign points. Some things are easy. They don't get so many points. The hard things get more points. But the powerful thing is that then we can create a high score list of all the different teams. And obviously, the teams on the bottom feel the pressure and the teams on the top feel the pride. So that leads to better security and reliability. And what's very important is to measure what matters. I think what we're quite good at Deliver Hero is looking at numbers, because at some size, only numbers are reliable to drive decisions. And we look at numbers around delivery, security, reliability, quality, team health, and have global dashboards where we track these things and can compare each other. We really believe in transparency, so everyone can see how they are doing, but also how others are doing, so you can go to a person who's doing better and learn from them. Maybe the most proud number, or the number I'm most proud about, is that Deliver Hero is not just a food delivery company, but we are also delivering a lot of software. And we track the number of deploys we do every month. And in this graph, you can nicely see how we constantly increase the amount of deploys. And last March, we reached a record of 40,000 deploys in a single month. So with that, I hope I could end some insights, how we operate as a group of superheroes, how we learn from each other, how we communicate, and how we win, hopefully, against competition. And I wanted to thank you for listening, and hope to see you all soon. Thank you.